My name is Kris Gethin, and what I aim to bring to you is inspiration, motivation from clients, everything that will allow you to evolve as a human being. Hello, everybody. Now, welcome to the Kris Gethin podcast, Indian edition. We're here in Mumbai, in my hotel room, with a very special guest. I've been following this gentleman online for a little while now, and I really like the content that he puts out. He is Dr. Manan, Vora.
That's right.
Vora, that is
Vora,
the
yes.
right pronunciation.
That's perfect.
He's an orthopedic surgeon, and you've actually studied overseas and here in India. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your qualifications, and what made you want to become a doctor?
Absolutely, Kris. Firstly, thank you so much for having me here. It's an absolute delight. I have been following your content as well, and really looking up to you from a point of view for regards to fitness and nutrition and all the information you put out there. So it's firstly an honor to be on this podcast and be
Thank you.
meeting
It's an
you
honor
as
to
well.
have you here.
Thank you. So yes, as you mentioned, I am an orthopedic surgeon. I have actually come from a complete medical background, to be very honest. Right from my grandparents to my parents, my siblings, everyone is a doctor.
Wow.
So I come from a very
Oops. That's me.
yeah. So I come from a complete medical background, and it was just something that came naturally in terms of a funny thing. The dinner table conversations at my home when I was growing up were about medical cases and about which patient walked in, a conversation between us and the patient, a conversation between a relative and the patient, and someone from my family. So that's the kind of environment I grew up in. That's the kind of discussions that actually had being a child. So that's how medicine was kind of ingrained in me. I've always been an athlete in my life as well. I was ranked in the top 30 lawn tennis players in the under 16, under 18 level in India. And it was something that I was constantly pursuing along with academics till I reached a point in my life when I made a decision and I picked academics, I picked medicine, and that's something I pursued. Call it fate, call it interest in the musculoskeletal system. I got interested in orthopedics and went on to pursue orthopedic surgery. I went on to also do a diploma in sports medicine with the International Olympic Committee in Switzerland. And I really got interested in how athletes function, in how athletes live, how the body works, and how what goes into the making of an athlete, in the making of the performance of an athlete. And it really got me interested. So I'm really happy that I've managed to find a way to amalgamate my love for sports, my passion for sports, and my career as a sports medicine specialist, as an orthopedic surgeon. And that's where I am today, treating athletes, dealing with people who want to be fitter versions of themselves. And I think life's come full circle now for me, because it's made me find a way to mix orthopedic and sports. So yeah, that's where I am.
And now you are qualified as a doctor as well. Do you find yourself calling up a family member for advice about a patient and vice versa?
So funnily enough, I haven't gone on to specialize in a field that anyone in my family has done before. So there's no one from the orthopedic side or the sports medicine side of my family, so I don't really feel the need to do that. But yes, I mean, we do share funny stories and incidents that we have on a day-to-day basis, absolutely.
Interesting. So be careful what you tell your doctor. It could be a laugh around the dinner table
For
later
sure,
on.
we do laugh about it, without revealing our identity, but we do laugh about it.
So one thing I wanted to talk about is the device, the phone, the smartphone.
Yeah.
Quite often I see everybody in India has got a smartphone, and quite often you'll see people, hunched over, in a terrible postural position. If there's a couple going out for dinner, as soon as one person goes to the toilet, the other person gets the phone out straight away.
Absolutely.
It's a drug. If you think about it, if we become an alcoholic, we still have to go to the liquor store. If we become a drug addict, we still have to go and score the drugs. But this is just dumping dopamine all the time, whether it be from Prime or Amazon or Uber Eats or social platforms or whatever. It's just there. So have you noticed any decline in people's their skeletal system, specifically their back, since the inclusion and the evolution of the phone?
No, absolutely, you're spot on, because this started with the pandemic, because the work from home scenario started back then, and we had the number of people working in awkward postures at home. They lost their entire table and chair setup, which they were so used to in the office and in their workspace. And they started lying down on the bed and using their laptop. They started spending excessive amount of time on their cellular devices. The amount of cases that we've seen of neck pain, neck spasm, trapezitis, upper back, mid back, lower back problems, it has significantly increased over the last 3 years. I mean, it's reached a point where there's actual medical journals which have jokingly named this condition as text neck, which is
Text
obviously
neck.
a condition that you have got because of excessive forward bending of the neck and forward flexion of your neck, because you're constantly texting or you're constantly scrolling. So that is basically just stiffness of your cervical muscles, of your trapezius muscles, and it eventually leads to a postural problem long term as well. There's also a lot of scapular stiffness that takes place. Patients are actually presenting with significant amount of pain, a significant amount of decreased range of cervical motion. Some of them are even resulting in a little bit of tingling and numbness in their upper body, because a lot of the nerves that are there, they then supply your upper body as well. So these are significant problems that people are facing, and this has only come up since the pandemic. This has only come up since the amount of screen time of every individual has gone up. Similarly, we're seeing a lot of people with lower back pain because, like I said, they've been lying down, they've not been working on a chair and table setup, they've not really been, working out, they've not been going to the gym as much as they used to, or not really involving a lot of conditioning in their day-to-day routine. So they come up with a lot of lower back problems, a lot of issues. Another thing that we see is a lot of finger related problems.
Like carpal tunnel?
Yeah, so carpal tunnel is definitely a nerve related thing. When there is compression of your median nerve, that's when carpal tunnel comes in. That's more of a chronic condition. We're seeing a lot of people, and again, this is a fun term that has been coined. It's called text thumb. When you
Oh,
actually
wow.
have interphalangeal joint pain in your thumb, because the amount of times you are scrolling, can you imagine this?
Oh, wow.
You are scrolling your Instagram, your Twitter, your Facebook feeds non-stop, and you're actually getting interphalangeal joint pain in your thumb. There's stiffness, there's inflammation of that joint, which can eventually, and we don't know this because we didn't have our previous generation spend this much time on their phones. But if we're talking about 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we're looking at interphalangeal joint arthritis of your thumb at a much earlier age than it should happen as a degenerative joint disease. So these are the common things we're facing in our OPD. We're facing joint problems, we're facing thumb problems, we're facing neck, mid back, and lower back issues, and we're having to treat them. And you don't even really need a detailed clinical examination. I don't even need an x-ray. I just need a history. I just need to ask them, what do you do? What sort of work do you do? How many hours do you spend in front of the screen? What sort of posture do you maintain at home? And that's where we get all the answers. So definitely this is a significant issue going forward.
While we're on that subject, then, have you noticed, maybe since the pandemic, and maybe it's too early to tell, that has there been a decrease in people's testosterone levels? Now, the reason why I say that, and I know there's a lot of viewers and listeners that are going to think, oh, Kris has gone a bit woo-woo again, because I'm just thinking about the amount of people that are now at home or were at home with their laptops, over their crutch area, really,
Yeah.
and I just think about the Wi-Fi, the EMFs that are penetrating the body that could potentially contribute to a decline in testosterone. Now, there's a lot of other things. There's phthalates, there's plastics, there's all these estrogens, and I don't know if you know Dr. Anthony J, who wrote the book Estrogeneration. There's a lot of these contributing factors, but is this something that you've noticed as of yet?
Very honestly, I haven't. This is not something that we, as clinicians, have ever, correlated to an increased screen time. I would love to read up more about it. I would love to see what research there is out there in terms of actually correlating excessive laptop usage and laptop kept over the crotch area to actually resulting in lower testosterone levels. There could also, obviously be a bit of an issue when you do that sort of study, because there could be other reasons for a decline in testosterone
Yeah.
levels. So how are
Lack
you
of
actually
sleep
putting it
or-
down and pointing it towards amount of laptop usage on the crotch area? But definitely an interesting point of study going ahead in the future. Definitely.
Yeah. Like I always play it safe. I do have I have like a platform. It's from this. I'm not sponsored by this company, by the way. Defender Shield that does stop any EMFs penetrating. Like I've got a reader there, so I'm always reading if I'm in a new hotel room or whatever. Where's the dirty electricity? Where's the higher EMFs and stuff? And it's generally, I've noticed if I'm in a hotel, the higher the floor, the worse it is. The more satellite signals, the more EMFs and whatnot. So I'm always a little bit cautious about that. I always try to earth myself a couple of days. So if there are anything penetrating, I'm trying to get rid of it through the earthing technique. And look, call it a placebo effect. I feel better. I sleep better. So, and my testosterone level is okay so far. You know, it's hanging in there. Going back to the back issues, the one thing that I noticed from the very first time I came to India in 2011, my client had dealt with a slip disc at that point. And then I was quite surprised how many people, specifically in India, would tell me that they'd had back problems, ruptured discs, slip discs, sometimes from exercise, sometimes not. Is this something, you've obviously studied overseas, have you noticed that is something that is a little bit more common here in India?
It is.
And why is this?
So there's a couple of things that I can think of. One is poor general conditioning, poor mobility and flexibility of the spine and the body in general, which I find in Indians far more. Whether it comes to the awareness of the fact that you need to move your body, whether it comes to actually lifting weights, whether it comes to the knowledge of actually conditioning, overall I feel Indians have far lesser knowledge and execution when it comes to that. I don't know if you want to point it towards excessive working hours and inability to find time to actually exercise. I don't know if you want to point it towards that Indians have far more stress in terms of financial problems and actually getting their day-to-day sorted than to worry about certain issues like, oh, have I conditioned my spine enough? Have I conditioned my body enough? Or I don't know if you want to talk about overall posture, which is in general something that Indians aren't keeping that much on their mind and really aren't on top of it. But I have definitely seen, especially in younger males, I've seen that the amount of people who actually have disc bulges, who actually have herniated discs is significantly high. It's very tough to point it down without having any statistics, but this is just the demographic that we're dealing with, and it then just boils down to, hey, are you working out? Hey, are you working your spine? Are you working your back muscles? Are you actually doing conditioning, or are you only doing strength? You go into the nitty-gritties of it and you try and give them that sort of advice to actually work on their spine mobility, to actually work on their flexibility of the muscles around that area, and many people aren't doing it. I'll be very honest with you, and despite having all the knowledge myself, if I am working out for 5 days a week, even I am looking to target each group of muscle or each body part once a week, and I'm also like, damn, I need to remove 30 minutes for mobility training. I mean, I know all that information, but I still need to remove it myself, and I'll admit it, there are weeks I forget to do it myself. So I can completely imagine that many people are just not able to put in that time and actually work. The entire concept of conditioning is not there in India. Everyone, I mean, we're just getting into the point where people are learning about strength. Where's the question of accepting conditioning that early on? So that is one thing. The other thing that I can think of is that I feel, and of course this depends on the socio-economic strata of a particular person and what kind of domestic help they have or what kind of luxurious life they are living. But abroad, most of the household chores are done by people themselves. Whether it's making your bed, whether it's making your food, whether it's getting your clothes washed, whether it's getting your utensils washed in the dishwasher, whatever it is, you're actually getting up and doing it yourself. Now, whether I put that as excess calories burned, whether I count that under NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, whether I count that as actually just getting up and moving your butt, you're actually ensuring that you're working a little more, you're working your muscles a little more, which people in India are laid back doing because most of them who have the ability to hire domestic help are actually doing it. Now, when I see the patients that I see with these problems, most of them are well-off people who have domestic help. I know this is not science speaking, this is not research speaking, this is just me talking from what I see on a day-to-day basis. But I don't want to go and call them lazy people, but they are people who probably aren't moving their butts as much as they should to do day-to-day chores.
Yeah, maybe they're
because they
working
have-
out, but just not doing the
Absolutely.
day-to-day
They
stuff.
have
Yeah.
people to do everything else. I mean, as simple as bending down and picking up the clothes from the washing bag and putting them in the washing machine, or washing your dishes or putting them in the dishwasher, that does require a certain amount of movement, which I feel people living abroad are doing because you don't have domestic help as easily and you're doing it yourself.
Mm.
And over here, you just have everything sorted for you. You're just, you've got your erect spine, you're walking, you're sitting in your car, you're going to your office, you're coming back, you're working out, maybe not, and that's about it. You're not really moving your body as much as you could to do day-to-day things. So that is just an observation from my end.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. Because I studied like the blue zones, the people around the world that live to like a disproportionate age, have centenarians in very good health. And they studied the blue zone in Okinawa, and they don't have a word for retirement. They don't retire.
Yeah.
And some of these people that are over 100 years old, they don't have seats. They sit on the floor.
Absolutely.
So they said on average they stand up and sit down about 50 times a day. That's like resistance training.
Absolutely.
Creating more bone density. So they're gonna have less issues because if you don't move it, you're gonna lose it.
No, absolutely. And if you bring me 100 Indian women about the age of 60, and you ask them to do a deep squat and actually try and get as low as possible, I guarantee you 7 to 8 out of 10 won't be able to do it because of early knee osteoarthritis. So it's as basic as you aren't conditioned enough to do those sort of movements. You haven't worked on the muscles around your knee joint after a particular age. Okay, you're just walking 30 minutes a day, but that's not enough. So if I actually tell them to do something as simple as a deep squat at the age of 60, they won't be able to do it because they've developed knee osteoarthritis, which is so prevalent in Indian women over here by the age of 55, 60. They'll actually struggle to do a deep squat. They'll wince in pain.
Wow.
They'll absolutely wince in pain. So that is just how it is over here.
And is it just because of the inactivity, or is there something in their diet that is contributing to this as well?
It's definitely inactivity. I mean, inactivity is a pandemic on its own, which we have to talk about. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I was reading up some numbers about this. There was a study which was done in India which said that every second person is actually physically inactive. And less than 1 in 4 people actually spend 30 minutes a day working out. So these are absolutely ridiculous numbers. And whether you talk about other chronic diseases, you talk about lifestyle diseases, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, breathing conditions, heart problems, I mean, physical inactivity just is the root cause of all evils. It stems from there and it leads to, that everywhere. So it's something that I like talking about a lot. It's something that I like bringing up a lot. In fact, most of my content on Instagram is just to get more and more people to work out. It's actually very basic, very simple, dumbed down content to tell people, guys, exercise now. You'll thank me 20 years later. And it's reached a point whether we talk about 60-year-old women who have knee osteoarthritis, whether you talk about the prevalence of diabetes in India, whether you talk about obesity, whatever you talk about, physical inactivity is the number one thing. Yes, of course, eating a healthy, balanced, nutritious diet is very important to maintain an ideal body weight, to maintain your BMI, to ensure you're all right, but no direct correlation to osteoarthritis for that matter. So I would definitely put that straight to physical inactivity, a certain amount of hereditary factor in terms of joint degeneration that is obviously going to be there. Smoking plays a massive role in increasing the risk and really leading you there, but that's not something that's really affecting Indian women, probably the way it is abroad. Indian women, yes, there are people who smoke, but not probably as many. So it's definitely coming down to physical inactivity when you rule out all the other factors, and that is just a massive, massive pandemic in India, absolutely.
Now, what about the food, and especially what has been introduced from the westernized culture? Of course, we have fast foods, but now we have the introduction of seed oils, refined seed oils, and then obviously a lot of sugar, which is can be very pro-inflammatory in overconsumption. Has this grown significantly over the past 20, 30, 40 years that has contributed to the diabetes pandemic that we're starting to see here?
Absolutely. And, I think it's not just about 20 years. I think this goes back far more than that because the Indian diet predominantly has always been carb heavy. it has always been carb heavy. Of course, we have people consuming non-vegetarian food, and they have far more protein sources when it comes to that. But when you go back to the roots of India, and even today, predominantly it is vegetarian food. And when you look at their balanced diet, which they consider balanced, is basically comprising of the chapatis and comprising of a large amount of rice. It's comprising of a large amount of vegetables and a small bowl of dal. So it is in general very carb heavy, which is ensuring that you're not getting that level of satiety which probably protein would give you. You're then having your snack, which is again going to be heavy on carbs. You're having a breakfast, which is usually idli or South Indian food, which is again carb heavy. And then most of India will repeat their lunch menu for dinner, which is what most of them do.
Right.
You'll be surprised to know that people don't cook their dinner again. If you are ensuring that your dinner is not a repetition of your lunch, it means you're privileged.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
India-
I don't blame them.
in India-
I'd have chicken tikka for every single meal if I could.
Yeah, but that's probably out of choice.
Yeah.
There's others who can't probably afford to cook 2 separate meals a day. So
Right.
in the morning, when the lady of the house is actually making their meal, they're going to make it into 2 times, and everyone's got to repeat their lunch for dinner again. And your lunch was carb heavy as well, and your dinner's going to be carb heavy
Right.
again.
Yeah.
Sweet tooth is something that I haven't really found out if that's the case everywhere. I have spoken to people, and I do know people abroad as well who have a sweet tooth. But in India, it's a massive, massive thing. The number of people who are absolutely addicted to ensuring they have something sweet after every meal. It's become an absolute addiction. They don't feel satisfied. They don't feel their meal is complete until they put in a piece of chocolate or a piece of gulab jamun or an Indian traditional sweet after every meal. And it's probably just a psychological thing that once you have that taste in your mouth, and you feel, now I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good for the next 3 hours till I have my next meal and I have my next sweet. But it's literally become synonymous or equivalent to rinsing your mouth after eating. It's like, oh, let me rinse it with some sweet. So it is an absolute problem, and you won't believe it, and I have to admit this. I have been in this situation for a few months a couple of years ago when I absolutely got addicted to this Sof. Are you aware of what Sof is?
Yeah.
So it's like a mouth freshener,
Yeah.
it was just filled with sugar, very honestly. And I got so addicted to it for about 4 months that I just needed it after every meal, and it made me feel so good. And the moment I gave it up, I craved it for a while, for about 20 days, 25 days, a month. And after that, I've not had it since that day, and I'm so comfortable. So it's just about making that decision about giving up that habit of consuming sweet, because sugar, at the end of the day, there's enough research, enough information, enough awareness about the harmful effect of sugar, refined sugar, and it's just something that Indians love. Whether we talk about Diwali, we talk about festivals, and we talk about that, but trust me, it's all year round.
Yeah.
It is all year round. The festival is just another excuse to have it probably 2 times, 3 times a day, but it's all year round. And you know how Indians are with festivals, how they are with celebrating small occasions, how they are with birthdays and anniversaries. You're going to have a cake every 10 days, irrespective, coming for some reason or the other, whether it's at work, whether it's at home. So it's as simple as just finding an excuse to have that sweet. So it's about how you make that decision and how you control that, because we are carb heavy, we are sugar heavy for sure.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask you, how do people control that? Because I've seen that they've done studies, mostly in rodent models, where they've had heroin, and they've got the rodents addicted to heroin, and then they've introduced sugar, and the rodents have actually, after a while, chosen the sugar over the heroin. It's that addictive,
Absolutely.
And I know it's definitely a cultural thing where, I've traveled around India, and my business partner, he'd always cringe because sometimes we'd go to someone's place and, it was deemed as a little bit, I'd say, rude if you didn't eat the food that was presented.
Absolutely.
And he'd cringe because I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not eating this, because it's just how I am. I feel terrible, emotionally and physically after doing it. So I'm like, I'm not just going to put myself through this. I'm going to have to offend some people. But for those that do have this addiction, how do they get over this? How do they wean themselves off it? Because we're surrounded by marketing and being influenced by it. And if we don't have that self-control and that discipline already in there, how do we get it?
No, I completely agree with you. And to bring up the point that you said, when you go to someone's house, it's so ironic that you're probably given sweet, or you're probably given
Yeah.
something which is carb heavy, because that is what symbolizes happiness. That is what people in their minds think is happy food, and is something going to make you happy, which is why when you've come as a guest, that's what you've been offered. I mean, you would have been like,
Right.
I mean, just give me a protein meal, give me a chicken sandwich, give me.
Yeah. I've always
I mean,
chosen function over fun food.
exactly. I mean, you'd probably be thinking in your head, give me a scoop of whey protein, and I'm actually happier than what you've
Yeah.
given me. And they'd be thinking, wait, what? I'd rather give you a rasgulla, because that is sweet and that is something that shows I'm happy that you have visited home. So
Right.
that mindset obviously needs to change. That the fact that people consider that happy food is showing what the problem is. When it comes to giving it up, I don't really have a specific formula to give up sweet, but I like to bring this up when it comes to starting any habit. Is about setting smart goals. When I say smart goals, I'm talking of SMART, where S is specific, M is measurable, A is achievable, R is realistic, and T is time bound. So what I like to believe in is setting an SMART goal when it comes to incorporating any habit or making any particular change. It's not sweet specific. But again, this comes down to sweet. So for example, if I want to make an SMART goal for sweet, I will say that I will not touch a dessert, or I will not touch chocolate, or I will not touch refined sugar for the next 14 days. I won't even have anything. Now, this is a specific goal. It's measurable because I'm measuring the fact that I will not consume anything. It is realistic because I'm not said I won't have it for a year. It is achievable because it's just a 14-day timeline and I know when I've completed it. And it's time bound because it's set for those 14 days. The idea is to create that SMART goal, complete that goal, give yourself a pat on the back, appreciate it, don't treat yourself with dessert, and actually set your next SMART goal and move towards achieving that. So that is my formula which I use for setting any habit, not just something for sweet. Now, if I go on and say that I will consume 5 grams of sugar every alternate day for 1 year, I mean, you're not going to sit and measure 5 grams of sugar every alternate day. You're making a 1 year time bound goal, which is going to be probably a little difficult to actually measure. It's not realistic, it's probably not achievable, and 1 year is too long. So that is a poor smart goal. So try and make a smart goal and go towards achieving that. That's my formula, SMART.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And with a shorter time goal where it gives
Absolutely.
somebody a sense of urgency and where maybe they can measure it in a different way. It's like, okay, I had headaches for the first 5 days while I was trying to detox, but now it's gone.
Yes, and it's also a sense of achievement. When you set a 1 year goal, you don't know you've won till you've set it, and you're setting yourself up for higher chances of failure.
Yeah.
But when I set a 14-day goal, and it takes me 5 days to just get into it, 7 days to realize, damn, I'm halfway through. Let's go, man. Let's go. Just 1 week more. Go 14 and boom, well done. Pat yourself on the back. We've achieved something. We've won something. Set the next goal. Start to that.
Yeah.
So it's about putting something that's achievable and realistic so that you get that sense of winning, get that sense of accomplishment, get that sense of achievement that you've actually done this. And then you move on from there.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I use something similar with my clients when it comes to, let's say if we're doing a 12-week transformation and, it doesn't come down to the 12 weeks. It's like, this is the boot camp for the rest of your life. This should be your lifestyle. And after 12 weeks, you shouldn't need me again.
Yeah.
Some people need it for the accountability.
Absolutely.
But, and let's say if we're doing one body part per week, I'll always say, okay, now we've only got 11 chest workouts left to completely change the shape of their chest. And now they're going, oh shit, that's a sense of urgency. And you have to just keep breaking it down to these baby steps that will create momentum after time. But, it can be a little bit doom and gloom if you just try to throw the kitchen sink at it. Now, the one thing that I really admire about you is, like I said, is your versatility. And, often I hear doctors say, well, you should stay away from a pre-workout or stay away from a protein powder. But I've noticed that you actually talk about these on your social channels. So let's just talk about whey protein powder, because you would have heard it thousands of times more than me, where a doctor says to their client, I think you should stop taking protein powder because you don't work out. What is your feedback and what is your suggestions and advice?
No, this is something I really want to talk about. And, while most of what I say may be really common for a doctor listening to me, I think if doctors are listening to this, it's equally important to them because it's your duty to know about food, it's your duty to know about supplements, it's your duty to educate the masses and make them aware about it. It really frustrates me when people say that you don't really need whey protein, you don't really need any supplement if you are not working out. I don't know why the word supplement gets so much hate. I don't understand it. If there are resources out there to actually enhance your life, your performance, your levels of a particular thing in your body, why not use it? So firstly, I want to make people understand that the word supplement is not the word substitute. No one is telling you to substitute your natural sources. It's just a supplement or an add-on to what you are consuming from food because you aren't able to meet your daily requirement goals. Now, if I look up the World Health Organization uh, protein requirement, it talks about 0.8 grams per kg of body weight of protein per day. This is exactly what WHO says. And I feel that is significantly outdated because we're at a point where 1.5 grams per kg body weight should be the bare minimum. I know it's very easily said than actually done, and probably it definitely increases based on your activity level and the demands that you have from your body. But we're at a point where 1.25 to 1.5 grams per kg body weight should be consumed by you irrespective of your activity level. And if you look at the vegetarian diet, you aren't able to consume that. I mean, if you're telling me someone who's weighing 70 kgs is able to consume 105 grams, which is 1.5 of protein per day without eggs and without whey supplements, then he's significantly consuming different sources of protein, which will probably be very difficult for him to sustain for a long period of time. Yes, if you go on a 3-month diet and you say, I'm going to consume these many dals, these many sprouts, and I'm just going to manage to hit 100 grams of protein, fine, you may be able to do it, but that's not the normal. So if you look at the public in general, you aren't probably hitting your protein goals. You're not getting in 80 to 100 grams of protein per day, and that is just a rough average value based on your weight. It obviously differs. So why not take supplements? Why not embrace them? Yes, for the Indian population as a whole, they are expensive. I do understand that not many people can afford whey supplements, but for the others who can, I don't understand why they don't embrace them. I am a big advocate of protein supplements, and which is why I do put that out on my page as well. I do try to educate people and let them know that it doesn't depend on whether you work out or not. It depends on whether you actually are able to hit your protein goals. Take a 7-day period, actually count the amount of calories you are consuming, count the amount of percentage of carbs, fats, and proteins your meals have, calculate the amount of grams of protein you are consuming over a day or over a 7-day period and average it out. And if you aren't hitting your protein goals, you need a protein supplement. It's really that simple. You don't need a
Yeah.
doctor to tell you that. I mean, you have great applications today, again, not sponsored, but you have Healthify Me, MyFitnessPal. You have such good applications which really put in Indian foods based on quantity and tell you how much of carbs they have, how many fats they have, how many proteins they have. Why don't you do it over a 7-day period? Calculate the amount of proteins you are consuming, calculate your weight, and see how many proteins you should be consuming. You will realize there is a deficit. How do you meet that deficit? Either you increase your natural sources or you take the help of a supplement. Whether you work out or not will decide how much protein you actually need to consume. But you'll still need to consume the bare minimum, which I'm sure you're still not consuming on a vegetarian diet. So, protein supplements is something that I really vouch for, I really advocate, and I really hope more and more people get into it because I believe it's an absolutely fantastic supplement with no side effects. There's a lot of bullshit out there. Sorry if I'm not allowed to say the
Oh, no,
word
you
bullshit.
can.
But a lot of crap out there, which even doctors put out and say, oh, it's going to damage your liver, it's going to damage your kidney. If you have no pre-existing liver or kidney issue, if you have no pre-existing liver or kidney disease, you're absolutely okay. You're absolutely okay to consume that scoop of whey protein. You're absolutely okay to consume 2 scoops of whey protein. Probably above that, we'll have to sit and calculate and see your blood levels and see what you're able to do and not do. But I can't imagine anyone not being able to consume 2 scoops of whey protein a day, whether they work out or not.
Yeah, like would there be any difference between your body digesting that whey protein to say like chicken.
Absolutely not. And in fact, it's probably easier on you and your tummy to consume it in that powder form and its absorption into the bloodstream rather than you having to consume. I mean, let's say one scoop of whey protein gives me 25 grams of protein. One scoop of whey protein gives me 25 grams. And if I need to have that in the form of eggs, and we let's say whole egg being 6 grams of protein, I'd rather just take a scoop down than have 4 whole eggs, because that's probably not going to be feasible for me each time to consume 4 whole eggs. It's much easier to consume it in a liquid form. So why not have it in a scoop of whey protein? Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're entirely right. You know, it just supplements your diet whenever you can eat whole food. You know, that is you know, natural. You know, that our ancestors ate. Of course, you eat it, but it's much like the biohacks that I include. You know, like I've got like that red light panel. Now, if I wasn't getting sunlight in the morning and in the evening, I'd use that panel because it's monsoons or whatever. But I'm always going to try to go for sunlight whenever possible. I've got an earthing mat, but I'm going to earth myself outside on the sand because that's the way that I want to do it.
Yeah.
But if I can't, then I've got an earthing mat. And supplements are exactly the same.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, performance supplements for sure. But like, you know, like you said with the protein, well, you need protein for hair, for your skin, for your nail, for your eyes, you know, and then if you're an active individual, then you may need more, which of course where a supplement comes in. And, you know, yeah, so I'm glad that you're talking about this because there's so many myths and misconceptions where I've been asked questions and I'm doing an interview, and within the same question or the same sentence, they talk about supplements and steroids within the same sentence. I'm like, these are two completely different things.
Absolutely. And, you know, at least with whey protein, I haven't really faced that issue. But when you talk about creat, and everyone goes like, oh, but isn't that a steroid? And I'm like, wait, what?
Creatine,
yeah. So, you know, the entire misconception when it comes to creatine, and, you know, people don't understand its use. People be like, oh, it's going to damage your kidneys. Are you sure you can take it? And, you know, it completely gets mixed with the steroid word very easily. So that's exactly what I like to put out there and let people know, try and educate the Indian masses, because this amount of information and awareness is not there when it comes to supplements. So, and it's still, you know, we're still talking about the absolute cream of the Indian population because they're the ones who can still afford the supplements, very honestly. So we're talking about, like, I mean, it's tough for me to throw a number because if 75% of India is considered rural India, living in villages and small towns, they're not going to be able to afford the supplement. So where this entire exercise is barely to educate the top 25% who can, and even they don't know about it. So can you imagine the rest of the country who's not even going to be able to understand this information or going to be able to afford these supplements? So, it's a massive problem in the country for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to that, like I competed in my very first show after, you know, I trained for the first few years and competed, got second place, and I wasn't taking any supplements whatsoever. Couldn't afford creatine. It was just a lot of dry tins of tuna being forced down with dry baked potato, looking in the bodybuilding magazine, thinking, I want to look like that, you know? But that's what it took, and it got me great gains. And I've always been transparent with this, that supplements will only give you, when we're talking about performance-based supplements, about 3% of your overall gains.
Absolutely.
You know, all dependent on that individual. Let's say if you've got to eat 6 meals a day, but you can only consume 3, then maybe you've got 3 meal replacement shakes.
Absolutely.
You know, that will help. So obviously that percentage can go up. But that's pretty much it. You know, it's hard work, it's dedication, it's consistency, dedicating yourself to an early night, not just Monday to Friday, but, you know, 7 days a week, managing your stress, and just having acute points of cortisol spikes, and that's pretty much your workout, and that is it.
Absolutely. And it's good you brought that up, because that brings us to the other spectrum of people. I mean, at one end, which we've discussed, you've got people who don't believe in supplements or don't know enough about supplements or probably can't afford supplements. At the other end, you've got the over enthusiastic fitness enthusiast who thinks that supplements are the answer to everything. He's able to afford it, or he's going out of his way to actually afford it from day one, and then purchase it from day one, and he thinks that that's the answer to everything. So let me get all my boxes, let me get everything ready, let me ensure I take this. But hey, what about the 97% that you actually just spoke about?
Yeah, what about the sacrifice?
The sacrifice and the entire hard work that's going to get you that body or get you that physique. or get you that level of performance that you desire, which you're expecting to come from magically taking those supplements, and then you're just going to be disappointed about it. So it's good you brought that up. The other spectrum is equally important to talk about.
Yeah. Like, don't think that your motivation comes in a pre-workout bottle.
Absolutely.
You need to be raring to go. Can't wait to get to the gym. If anything, it's very, very difficult for you to take your 2 days off a week.
Yes.
But, it doesn't come there. Of course, it can help and it can assist. Like you've spoken on your platforms, if you've got the right nitrates or the branched chain amino acids or, the blood vasodilators, that can really help.
Absolutely.
But it's not going to get you to the gym.
Yes.
You've got to get there
Absolutely.
at the end of the day.
Yes.
So talking about plant-based diets then, because obviously there's a huge population here in India that are vegetarian or vegan. What is your take? Of course, like I've trained everybody. I've gone vegan for a couple of months myself. I've done keto for a little while. I've done carnivore. I've done everything. I like to test everything on myself,
Okay.
But what is your take on like the plant-based diet and the vegetarian diet? Is it healthy? Is it complete? What's your take?
When it comes to these various forms of diet, and we have something coming up every few years, it probably comes in here in India a couple of years after it becomes a big thing in the West. I remember when keto came in, this was probably 2016 to 2018 was the keto phase in India, where everyone was, oh man, we got to go keto, we got to do this.
I remember, yeah. Hit it hard,
if I was making videos back then, all my videos would be about keto and telling people what it is. And then people tried it out and they got absolutely great results. And the moment they went off it, they kind of put on everything back. This was the case with most people. They didn't understand the weaning off process. They didn't understand, the process that goes back into the carb metabolism and going back into, eating carb heavy, which you're used to doing all throughout your life. And for a certain period of time, you went into keto. My take on it is that if you're able to make it a lifestyle change, and if you're able to incorporate it when it comes to plant-based foods, when it comes to shifting from non-vegetarian to vegetarian or from vegetarian to veganism, if you're able to make it a lifestyle change, then good on you. I am not against, or I am not strongly against any particular form of diet. I feel each one comes with its merits, each one comes with its demerits. I also feel each one may be good for a particular set of people or a particular kind of people, based on what they have been consuming throughout their life, based on what they are able to consume for their future as well. So I look at it from a point of view that if you're jumping on it as a fitness fad, if you're jumping on it as a trend, chances are that it won't really sustain. Chances are that your body won't really adapt to it and react to it the way you want to. But if you are able to make a lifestyle change and move into vegetarianism, which I have known many people to do, they are able to sustain it and they are able to adapt to it. They are able to get absolutely great results from it. Whether they are able to do it from vegetarianism to veganism is something that I haven't seen too much in the Indian population.
Yeah.
It's probably something that people in the West have incorporated and successfully done. But the Indians call it lack of resources or call it lack of options because of functions and socials where they aren't able to get that sort of meals and they get the sort of food that they want to eat. They aren't able to sustain to it for a long period of time with the Indian lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm talking about veganism.
Yeah.
Again, you will find exceptions, people who go to the extremes and say, hey, nothing doing. I am vegan. This is how I am. If I go out and if there aren't any options, I don't eat, or I carry my food from home. I have options ready. Fair enough. But you see a lot of these people who do it for the fad, who do it just, let me see how it is.
Yeah.
But
I've tried everything else.
It's Saturday night. I'm having what's available.
Yeah.
I'm hungry. I'm having what's available. I've gone for a wedding. I'm having what's available. That's not the way to do it then. So then they're neither here nor there and they don't really get those results. So when it comes to non-veg to vegetarianism, I am strongly for it and I completely have seen people transform their bodies.
Yeah.
But when it comes to vegetarianism to veganism, that's a jump I haven't seen in India very successfully yet.
Yeah, you're entirely right. Like I've got a client, his name's Samya, shout out to Samya. He's a vegetarian and the results this guy has been amazing. His metabolism is firing right now. He was definitely insulin resistant, overweight, probably mid-20s to late 20s body fat. I'm throwing so much food at him now these days. His body is just a finely tuned machine, and he looks phenomenal.
Wow.
But like you said, with a plant-based, I think it comes down to people's genetics as well, to
Absolutely.
how they take to it. Because I did vegan for a couple of months. It was funny because my partner was mostly plant-based, and I said, okay, let's go pure vegan for a couple of months. I managed to stick it out for 2 months, no worries. She bailed after about 4 weeks. But I remember, and this is how I remember that it wasn't for me. As soon as I broke and went for the full non-veg meal following, it's like I'd taken a nootropic. My brain just lit up, and I felt like I had so much more clarity, not realizing that I'd gone into a bit of a brain fog for a couple of months. However, I've got some friends, one friend, Pritchard, who is a phenomenal endurance athlete, absolutely amazing. And he's actually a celeb chef. His name is Dirty Vegan.
Okay.
And he's got a book called Dirty Vegan and a TV show. And he does very well on it.
Yeah.
Very, very well. So I think everyone has to take to it a
No.
little bit differently. Try before you buy.
No, and I think this takes us into a nice segue into, genetics in food, genetics in nutrition. A lot of us really underestimate the importance of genetics when it comes to food. I am a firm believer that what your ancestors have been eating, what your body and every cell has been accustomed to be fed with, is going to play a large role in how your body adapts to it. And a very day-to-day example is when we look at people in the West, or when we travel to the West, we see people having their subways for lunch, or we see the amount of bread consumption is so high, whether it's pizzas, whether it's burgers, or a day-to-day, the amount of bread consumption we see is so high. When we try to do that in India, you start putting on a lot of weight. And then you start thinking that, hey, those guys have it every day. How are they okay with it? But they were built that way. That's how they've been having from day one. You've been having your carb-heavy meal in the form of rice and chapati, which has been what you have been trained to eat from day one. And your body has been used to that. Your body is accustomed to that. If you have a seasonal fruit, if you have mango during mango season, and if you have lots of mango, for example, which is a fruit which is very high on fructose, that is what your ancestors have been having. That is what your body has been used to, because as a child, you've been having that. And you see that, oh, I'm pretty okay having it. But you have a foreigner visiting India during summer, and you feed them 3 mangoes a day, and you feed them completely fructose heavy fruits, or you put them on a rice and roti thing, they'll react very differently. So you need to understand that if your body is used to a particular thing, if your ancestors have been eating a particular thing, and that is how your body has been accustomed to it, that is how your body has been trained to it, there has to be a genetic component that really influences your body's ability to eat a certain kind of food based on your upbringing, based on the way you lived your entire life. So that is something that plays a much larger role than we actually give credit for. And that is where adapting to those new diets and all, really throws your body off guard, because that's not what it's been doing throughout. Yes, that doesn't mean your body doesn't have the ability to transform and adapt to vegetarianism if you've been a non-vegetarian all your life. But that is you forcing your body, that is you training your body, that is you ensuring and telling each cell in your body that, hey, from now I am vegetarian and this is how you need to deal with it, this is how you need to react to it. But the entire role that genes have to play, it's something we don't give enough importance to, but it is there. We have to accept it.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you brought up about like the seasonal fruits and the seasonal eating. That's what I really like to adapt to. Obviously fruits are exported and imported all around the world now. We're consuming these fruits that are generally out of season based on our genetic makeup. And funny you should say that about, for instance, growing up on rice. Like coming from Wales, that it was mostly potatoes. So if I test on my blood glucose monitor, potatoes doesn't really give me a spike.
Absolutely.
However, rice will give me more of a spike. It just wasn't something that we grew up with.
Absolutely. And if we do it the other way around, and I have the amount of potatoes you do,
Yeah,
we'll have to track my glucose, and you'll understand that that's probably different. So it does play some role for sure. Absolutely.
Now, do you, for instance, if someone was to come to you now and say, look, I want to get my blood work done, do you go through certain snippets to say, okay, this is what your diet should be made up of, and these are the supplements that you need to start including because let's say your vitamin D is low or your EPA, DHAs. Is this something that you do? Like I really like going down these rabbit holes where I'll have like, the general blood test. I'll have an organic acids test. I'll have, could be a prolactin test. A Dutch test. All these tests. I love just going down these rabbit holes. So then, someone may look at all the supplements that I've got and go, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" But it's based on my deficiencies.
Absolutely.
What I'm able to metabolize. I don't absorb vitamin D through the sun, so I have to supplement kind of high. So is that something that you do as well?
So very frankly, as an orthopedic surgeon, I do not make nutrition plans.
Right.
So I have to be very honest about that. What we see in clinical practice is people coming with body fatigue, coming with muscular pains, coming with joint pains, aches, and then we end up doing those tests because after the clinical examination of a particular joint or a group of muscles, we don't see any structural abnormality.
Right.
So then we're looking at blood work. That's when vitamin D3, B12, calcium, these are the main ones that come in. And that's where we come up with certain deficiencies and we supplement them with those. When it comes to setting up a nutrition plan and finding the deficiencies that you spoke about, it's not something that I see on a day-to-day basis because it doesn't really involve my practice. Very happy to send those over to certified nutritionists, fitness trainers, health coaches who actually deal with this on a day-to-day basis because I feel they are far more suitable and far more trained to deal with these aspects and then ensure that it's incorporated into their diet either in the form of supplements or naturally.
So let me ask you, sorry for cutting you off.
No.
So let me ask you this then, based on what you've seen, what are the most common deficiencies do you find in India?
Oh, it's D3 and B12.
Right.
100%. And I'm probably significantly reducing my future income by saying this out there. But the number of people we just diagnose with D3 and B12 deficiencies and correct them, it's probably running my house right now, very honestly, because that is majority of the people in India. D3, B12 deficiencies, phenomenally high.
And what do you find after they start supplementing or taking in foods that have D3 and the B vitamins? What changes do you notice?
So in most cases, they do need the supplement. It's not just a food dietary change that I can give them.
Yeah.
So in most cases, they do need the D3 and B12 supplementation in the form of either an injectable if the values are significantly lower or an oral supplementation. Oh, they are absolutely fantastic in 2 months. All of their orthopedic complaints have completely vanished.
Wow.
They feel I've given them some magic drug, some magic pill. And if people start getting tested every year for D3, B12 and supplementing themselves, I probably won't have most of the work that I do today, very honestly, because that's how significantly high it is. Every second patient coming in is coming with just a vitamin deficiency, and my job is just to diagnose. It's to rule out any other structural abnormality, because you'll come with a muscular pain in your back, you'll come with a cervical pain, and I have to rule out, make sure your discs are okay, make sure your nerves are okay, make sure your muscles are okay, make sure your bones are okay. Once that's the case, I move towards your blood work, and there it is, there's my answer. I come up with a deficiency again. So the first 2 months go in supplementing them, and then putting them on either to a nutritionist who puts them on a particular diet, or me just educating them on calcium and vitamin D3 rich foods and ensuring that they consume these foods, and then they don't have these problems coming up in the future. But again, I'm the way Indian population is, whether it is the lack of sunlight they get in the form of vitamin D3, or I have actually made content and information on the fact that the amount of pollution there is in urban cities, you're not really getting the vitamin D3 from sunlight that you would get in Goa, for example, or in a place where there's absolutely fresh, clean air.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to need a lot more of your light if you keep spending time in Mumbai. That you think you're spending time in the sun, but your body's really not absorbing the vitamin D3. Because that is something there has been significant research in the adult urban population in India, that even though they're spending time in the sun, their D3 levels are still low. Because the levels of pollution are so bloody high. So just telling them to take the supplement and then go out in the sun isn't probably enough. We're probably reaching a point where people in Delhi and Mumbai with the high levels of pollution will probably need a 2-month oral vitamin D3 supplementation every year. I mean, you're used to your COVID booster if you're going to be taking it every 6 months. every year you just go through a 2-month cycle of vitamin D3 supplementation, because the number of orthopedic problems that are coming because of low vitamin D3 are significantly very, very high.
Right. Okay.
So that is something we're just reaching a point where we're telling people every year, just take the supplement, man. Just, you don't need to come see me.
Yeah.
Just take it every year, because you think you're spending time in the sun. You probably are spending time in the sun. You're probably not getting enough vitamin D3.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Like, I haven't burnt at all. I'm usually pretty good at protecting myself from the sun. But I was in Goa 2 weeks ago. I was literally out there in, say, 30 minutes and I got burnt.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's a difference. Okay.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to go back to, because we've got to wrap this up pretty soon, but there's one thing that I forgot to ask, is that you mentioned that, of course, it's a carb-heavy culture. However, it always has been.
Yeah.
It always has been. Do you think it's been the inclusion of fats with the carbohydrates that's created a bit of a problem? Because we don't see this in nature. You don't see an avocado that's a hybrid with a strawberry or anything like that. But we do know that when you combine the fat with the carbohydrate, it lights up, through brain scans, and it lights up this bliss point in the brain where it's like, wow, that feels so good.
Absolutely.
It's that feel-good hormone that gets released. Do you think that is a bit of a problem? And does the body then go, well, I'll use the carbohydrates as energy and I'll store the fat as fat?
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. You asked me about whether over the last 20 to 30 years, and I spoke about how we've always been carb heavy. It's definitely the fat heavy which has come in recently.
Yeah.
The amount of options, and we talk about good fats and bad fats, and that's absolutely okay. But the amount of options that Indians have now got for consuming healthy fats has increased significantly. But then again, just because you call them healthy fats doesn't mean you go on having them without portion control or without any sort of calculation. So then you're confusing your body, because the amount of carb percentage or the protein percentage or the fat percentage that you need to be consuming per day, you are messing with that because the amount of fat percentage is high, and you're convincing yourself and telling yourself, hey, this is a healthy fat, this is a good fat, I can consume as much as I want of this. So that's where portion control comes in, which is something Indians again haven't really understood. The fact that you really need to calculate the amount of calories you're consuming, the amount of meals that you are consuming, to actually understand. People think balanced diet means having carbs, protein, fats, vitamins, minerals. But a balanced diet will be balanced when you calculate its percentage. You need to balance it, you need to measure and balance it. So that's where I completely agree with you, is that the amount of fat in each person's diet is increasing. And the body is getting confused. It doesn't know whether, are we going carb heavy? Are we going fat heavy?
Yeah.
So that is something that is a significant problem. But unless people understand, yes, you've accepted there's awareness about fats, there's awareness about healthy and unhealthy fats, but what about portion control? What about controlling the amount of fats that you consume vis-a-vis the amount of carbs you are consuming, vis-a-vis the amount of protein you are consuming? That's when you'll truly be forming a balanced diet.
Right, okay.
So that is a major problem in the Indian population today. They're not really calculating their fat percentage. They've been told avocados are heavy, avocados are healthy, and they go all out and eat avocados for them.
Right, yeah.
So just because it's healthy doesn't mean you can consume 6 of them.
Yeah.
You still need to calculate how much your body can take avocado and just feed it that much. You don't need to go crazy about it.
Yeah. Now, I've got a question that is selfishly for myself, but I'm sure for a lot of listeners as well, that are active and into athletic performance and bodybuilding. Now, I've had a lot of injuries over the years. I've competed in a lot of extreme sports. That's where the majority I've got my injuries, like tore my tricep, my labrum, my rotator cuff, separated my AC joints, tore my hamstring, my pec. Pretty much
everything.
Yeah, everything. And it's either in the form of snowboarding, motocross, surfing, stupid stuff. What would be your suggestions for me? Because I love training. I don't have any plans on slowing down anytime soon. But is there a routine that you would suggest for myself to do before I train every body part? And is there any home care, like massage or whatever, that you would suggest?
No, so it's very difficult for me to tell you something that you haven't heard of yet, or something that you don't know, because I'm sure you're well-informed, well-educated, and you're on the top of your game. The only thing that I can think of, and we tell athletes this, is about prehabilitation. Today, how you've heard of rehabilitation,
Yeah.
which is what you do after you get injured. And this is more so for the listeners because I'm sure you're aware of it. But prehabilitation is the kind of routine that you otherwise follow and train your body to ensure you don't get injured in the first place. So that comes to, again, conditioning your body, doing certain sort of exercises, whether it is, let's say for the upper body, you have your scapula stabilizing exercises, you have your shoulder stabilizing exercises, you have your rotator cuff muscle exercises using therabands and things like that. You really work the small muscle. It's not about heavy lifting. It's just about doing the smaller things, working the smaller muscles and ensuring that you don't get injured. So for example, for the shoulder, off the top of my head, you just put a TheraBand across a door or across a squat rack and you do your Y exercises, for example. These are going to work small muscles of your body, which are really going to keep them in good shape and increase the threshold of those muscles to try and prevent a rotator cuff injury that can otherwise occur with heavy lifting. So similarly, you have your ACL entire knee rehabilitation program, which includes a list of exercises, a list of trainings, a list of things that are easily accessible online, but you spend significant time of your workout doing them so that you don't get injured in the first place.
So you do that like before your workout?
You can either do it for 20 minutes after your workout,
Yeah.
or you can actually just spend 1 or 2 times a week doing it.
Right.
It's not something that is going to help prevent injury in that workout session. So you don't really need to do it as a pre-workout before your thing, because I'm a strong believer in going heavy when you're fresh.
Yeah.
So I don't believe in doing a 20-minute warm-up, for example, and then going into your workout. Yeah, fine. You have your first set, you do it just with a bar and then you go add the weight. You want to do that, that's okay. But I believe in going heavy early on.
Yeah.
So if there is anything like a mobility session or a prehabilitation session or a conditioning session, I prefer to leave it for after the workout session when you've given your maximum for strength.
Got it. Yeah.
So whether you do it after the session, whether you do it on another day, it's just to ensure that your overall body is conditioned, is able to take the weight and load that you want to put on it. At the end of the day, it's about load management. So you're forcing an injury when your level of threshold is lower. So let's say your level of threshold is a 6 on 10. You either lift below 6 or you increase your load threshold.
Right.
By doing prehabilitation, you raise that load to 7, to 8, to 9, so you can continue lifting to 6, 7, and 8 so that you don't get injured. The moment you go above your load threshold, you're risking of forcing an injury. And if you don't want to stop lifting, if you don't want to reduce your weight, if you don't want to lift below your load, you need to keep increasing your load, which will only keep increasing by conditioning.
Right, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you ever so much for your time. This has been a phenomenal conversation.
Thank
I've
you.
really enjoyed this. So if people are to find you online, how can they do so? What your platform?
Just search Dr. Manan Vora on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Hopefully I'll start YouTube soon, but these 3 are my target focus
You've
as
got to
of
start
now.
a YouTube, man. You've got to start.
I do. I really hope so. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll put the links and the spelling in the show notes so you can find this fine gentleman. Thank you ever so much,
Thank you so much
It's
for
been
having me.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
So this is another episode of the Kris Gethin podcast. If there's anything that you would like to see further, please let us know in the comments. Until next time, we are out.